I had to adapt to these new platforms because that's how you survive in this difficult, competitive world of journalism. We have to be accurate. We have to be specific. And I think that's something that I try to include or inculcate in my writing as well. There were many moments where he would tell me exactly, look here, you are making a mistake. You must highlight this aspect. Each of us, if we like, enjoy reading each other's stories, then only we would think of passing it on to the editors. For me, it was a tribute to Indian sports in a package of 40 champions. Resilience, grit, determination. And I think these qualities they don't just help you in sports, but in fact in all different areas of life. These success stories in sports are giving them financial security, and
Right.
they're promising them a very good life.
Hi, Vijay. Hi, Akshay, and welcome to the About Her show. A show where we largely get trailblazing women, to share the story of their lives with us, to tell us about their successes, failures, challenges, all of that, so that they get to talk about themselves and also help us inspire other women. And then, along with women, we also get men on the show, men who champion such trailblazing women, because we believe that for a truly gender inclusive world, men and women need to be allies in this journey. And not only do we get men on the show, but we also showcase their accomplishments, their achievements. And looking at your profile and the kind of work that you're doing, first of all, I've rarely come across someone who's been doing what you are doing, which is documenting historic sports moments. You know what happens when, even when we are living through a moment, at that moment, we all rejoice, we feel happy for the athlete, the sports person, for the country, and then it just fades away from memory. You don't remember it unless somebody refers to it later. And then, of course, what about the coming generation? They don't know much about it. So when you document such journeys which you've been doing and you've put it in the form of a book, I think you're doing a great service to the nation because you are helping us relive those moments, appreciate those sports people, and feel proud of being part of a nation, of a country where such people have existed, are existing. So thank you so much for doing this for all of us. So, like I said, welcome to the show and let's get started. Yes.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Thank you very, very much for having us. Yes, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. It's a great opportunity for us and for me, especially, to have your platform where we can talk about our journey and our work.
I think it's a great opportunity for all of us, all three of us. So thank you so much. So let's get started. And Vijay, my first question, how should I say, a natural progression is for you. So the question is that before we speak about, the books you've written, together, so I'd love actually to go back to where this journey began. Now, your writing career started long before Akshay entered the picture as a co author. So, my question is that how did your journey as a sports writer begin? And at what point did it evolve from being a solitary pursuit into something you could share with your son?
Yeah. So my journey actually began in 1981 when I would write some short stories, and I used to do some sports writing for Children's World, which is one of the iconic magazines I have grown up
Yes.
reading. It was a very good platform to learn because you had to learn storytelling very early in my career.
Okay.
And then, of course, I joined the Patriot newspaper, then later on the Hindu in 1986. So again, these two papers and the Sports Star magazine gave me a huge platform to chase my sporting dreams. I could never play. I wanted to be a cricketer, but then I realized best thing would be to write about them.
Wonderful.
So it so happened that Mr. Vishnu Singh Bedi, when he retired, I just shot off a letter to a couple of newspapers, Indian Express and the Patriot, and they published it. And Mr. Bedi kind of he wrote a letter to me, which I still preserve, praising my work, which was a huge, huge motivation. And of course, my mother, who was the first to realize and who would always kind of encouraged me to write, to kind of pen stories, because I would bombard her with my sporting knowledge, which she had very little knowledge about. So those were my early years. And so I would say 1981, that's when my sports writing career began with a test match between India and England at the Firoz Kotla.
Okay, okay. Wonderful. In fact, all these publications that you've mentioned, Children's World, Sports Star, all these I have grown up, reading. And Children's World, of course, used to be one of my favorites. So, yes, huge amount of nostalgia over there. So, okay. So, Akshay, when did you realize that sports writing wasn't just your father's world anymore, that you had a voice and a lens of your own and you wanted to bring that into the writing?
Yes, ma'am. I think for me, when I was back in college, firstly, I was always surrounded by newspapers, magazines, and books. I mean, given dad has always been interested in reading and writing, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So that gave that I already had that exposure. So I think during college, I wanted to try out writing, and there was a magazine called Teleport, which it's not there anymore. So I
Mm-hmm.
started writing for them, and back then it wasn't even on sports. It was on social issues, history, culture, and I used to, in fact, go and interview.
Oh,
For example, I had done a story on puppeteers in Delhi.
oh.
And so I visited the colony, I in the community, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and interviewed a few artists, and that's how my interest in writing began. That's how I would say. I
Mm-hmm.
think later on, I wanted to continue writing. I used to work in the education sector,
Yeah,
and I thought I needed a break. I and being, as I said, that being a journalist, I thought maybe I could continue writing.
yeah,
And sports was the easy way to do it. So that's how I got into that. And I used to play sports as well, so it wasn't that new for me. It
mm,
was, I could say, a natural progression. You could say that.
right.
And so yes, in 2020, in fact, Dad was writing a book. I had contributed a small portion to it, and the publishers, Bloomsbury, back then, they got to know, and that's when they said, why not I do a book of my own, obviously with Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first book with Dad, called Netflix, which focused on badminton in India.
Okay, okay. So that's wonderful. Actually, I think somewhere what your journey tells us is that, the environment in which we grow up, the way we are raised, that does somewhere have an influence on the kind of life that we lead. So you were living in a world where sports was a big thing, writing about sports was a big thing. So somewhere it came into you, and that's how you decided to take it forward. All right. So, Vijay, as I understand, of course, I've been looking at your books and you've covered, like, you've changed formats, you've changed media platforms, generations. I mean, it's not that you're writing only about contemporary sports personalities or only the earlier ones, but you're covering all of them. So my question is that, having covered more than 100 tests and ODIs, what kept you curious enough to keep writing through these changing formats, media platforms, and generations of athletes?
Yeah, it was a lovely journey. It was a learning experience, and I had to adapt to these new platforms because that's how you survive in this difficult, competitive world of journalism. And I began from a time when we would work on a typewriter, and then came laptops, and then fax reports. I mean, sending reports by fax, and then the email came as a big boon. It helped me save time. So it was a journey that I had to understand for survival. I will have to be, what should I say, versatile, if I may call it.
Mhm.
And I had to learn these different formats. Today, as we are doing this podcast, this is one of the most wonderful platforms I've come across in the last few years. Similarly, doing YouTube interviews of sportsmen on the Sports Star channel. They have a wonderful channel. So it was a competitive world, and I learned so much from the youth because they were facing different challenges and learning to adapt. So I had to do it with their help. I had many youngsters who kind of handheld and took me on this journey. So it was a beautiful experience, and I'm still continuing. There is so much to learn.
You're so right. You have to constantly grow and evolve in life. You cannot stagnate and you cannot say that, okay, I know only this much and I'm not willing to change. So in with changing times, you've got to change. So yes, and you've done that beautifully. All right. So Akshay, looking at your background, so you come from a background in science and education. So, how did teaching shape the way you approach storytelling, research, and writing, especially for the younger readers?
Yes, ma'am. I think science, being a student of science, we have to be accurate. We have to be specific, and I think that's something that I try to include or inculcate in my writing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, that's something that I was going to talk about even as we progress in the interview,
Mm-hmm.
in the podcast. That is, I used to focus a lot on research while writing, which is getting the facts right,
Correct.
getting finding as much information as possible, and then sifting through all that information that we have gathered. I think that's the scientific approach that I try to bring in my writing as well. Apart from that, I think there's another aspect that I would like to highlight, which is while teaching also, I used to teach math, specifically math.
Mm.
And in mathematics, it's already a very rigid subject where there's not a lot of scope to experiment with. There's you have certain formulas. There's a few ways to teach that subject.
Mm.
Um, but I think I used to try my best to make the topics as interesting as possible. And I think that's the same approach that I try to bring in writing as well, which is stories have been told before.
Right.
It's not like what we have written, people don't know about. It's just that maybe trying to bring highlighting a different angle, narrating the story in a slightly different way. That's something that I try to experiment with and try to bring in my writing.
Mm.
And lastly, I think as far as writing itself is concerned, as I mentioned, it was my choice of uh, experimenting with as part of my career. You could say it's something that I'm still trying to figure out. To be very honest, but yeah, being even having my experience in education, I think writing is something that I enjoy, and I think that's also something that I would want the younger generation to continue doing, reading and
So actually, you're right. So I am okay. So I am also an educationist and I'm also a writer. So I can kind of connect and, I can understand what you're saying. So even to teach, I mean, teaching is also in a way storytelling, because even though there are facts that you are stating, but you have to relate them in a way that the students not only understand, but they resonate with them. And at the end of the day, they are facts which have to be well researched. It cannot be a cock and bull story that you've just, thought of. So I think, yes, it is like, and bringing that into a more formal way, I think that was a natural progression for you, which I sometimes feel has been the case for me also, because I've been telling stories to my students for the last so many years. So now I've decided to kind of just put it down and, in the form of a book. So I can totally understand that. Okay. So my next question is for both of you. Now, you decided to get down to it together. And, the usual father and son dynamics also, that is also another thing which I'm sure has entered into the scheme of things. So my question is that when you sit down to write together, how do you divide the work, the experiences, the memory research, the narrative voice? I mean, is it instinctive or is it structured? Vijay, you can go first.
I think it was structured. In my case, it was my experience
Hmm.
of reading, watching, writing for almost 40 years. And it helped me immensely in my books, especially here, because again, reliving, going back into the past, digging news and information, then putting them in a very readable format. I mean, the pressure was that the readers, young readers especially, should not find it very boring. They have to be fed with a lot of interesting data. So much of my writing, much of my recollection was the experience which I've gathered over a period of time. And then, of course, with Akshay's help, revisiting those great moments was a very, I would say, a very pleasant experience, because some of the events I had written about already, I had covered. So I was there, which helped me. Of course, Akshay would be able to explain better how he went about it.
So, Akshay, yeah.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I think yes. As Dad was mentioning, we I think began with a structured way, in a structured way, which is first definitely dividing the chapters between us, which athlete or which story we are going to focus on individually, and then starting with the research. Research is something that, as I think I mentioned earlier as well, is something that I would focus on,
Right.
be it going through all the articles that have been written before in different newspapers. We used to visit libraries, the Prime Minister's Library in Delhi.
Mhm.
We had access to Sports Star magazine, thanks to Dad and The Hindu. We have used that extensively in our both the books, in fact. But obviously, We Are the Champions, we have used Sports Star magazine, The Hindu, newspapers. Research was something that I would focus on.
Mhm.
And then I think writing, we would first finish our own chapters. Then we would come together and then obviously bounce off the stories. Once we have written, we would first check if each of us, if we enjoy reading each other's stories, then only we would think of passing it on to the editors. So that's how the structure was, and we are even now we are still for our next book we are still continuing the same structure, same process.
Wonderful. So I've picked up a very interesting point where you're saying that writing chapters and then giving them to each other to read. Because I think when you write something, you're very emotional and it's a very personal thing because you feel that you've done the best, you've written the best. But when somebody else reads it, then they give you an objective assessment of what it is. Maybe all the frills and whatever is extra is not required, that can be edited out. So I think that is a wonderful way that, collaborations work. And you are an example of that. All right. So carrying on with
May, may,
yeah, yeah, sure, sure, sure.
may I add a line
Yes, yes.
that this young man made me restructure and rewrite two chapters.
Great, great job, Akshay. All
Yeah.
right. So, tell me, I mean, working as a father and son, it also adds an emotional layer to the collaboration. You're not just two individuals who've decided to come together, but you are related to each other as father and son. So tell me, what has writing together revealed to you about each other that everyday life perhaps never did? Akshay, why don't you go first?
Sure, ma'am. Ma'am, I think more than for this particular question, more than writing, I think I would like to focus on his journalistic skill of talking to people, of maintaining relationships. I think
Right.
that's something that is because without that we could not have done anything. I mean, all his that's how I understand he has written so many stories in Sports Star and The Hindu. And I think that came very handy. That was our massive advantage while researching and while finding great stories for this book.
Right.
And having direct access to players, athletes, coaches, or even journalists from other newspapers and magazines. I mean, that's not an easy feat,
Yeah.
because we are seeing that, like, the younger generation, how much they're struggling
Hmm.
to talk to players and all that. So I think that's a skill, and that I think I've grown up seeing in him.
Yeah.
uh, I don't know how much of it I have really imbibed, but that's a huge thing that I saw firsthand. Because I mean, for this thing, this skill came handy for the book, so I could see it firsthand. That was the difference between what I would see before and for the book.
Right.
So yeah, I think this is one quality I would highlight.
Okay. Okay. Vijay, what would you like to say?
I think the biggest, I would say, the quality which he had was to argue with me. He would not very difficult to convince him. So
Mm-hmm.
that this was one aspect I learned during the writing of these two books, and especially we are the champions where penguin are, of course, I mean, you know them, uh, very difficult to please the editor. So we
Yeah.
had a tough time, and he was helping me. So I was mighty impressed with his ability to analyze.
Mm-hmm.
I have watched many contests with him together at the stadium or on television, and there also I could realize that yes, he sees a different point from what I'm trying to analyze. So this was one great thing. Plus his research, how meticulous he was, how he would take the notes and bring it to my notice. So there were many moments where he would tell me exactly, look here, you are making a mistake. You must highlight this aspect. So this part of Akshay's reading of sports, reading of, I would say, his own reading of literature. He
Mm-hmm.
reads a lot, like this current book fair we have been going almost every day.
Okay.
So this was an aspect. Research and the ability to analyze is what stood out, which I probably didn't know before.
Yes. So actually working together does reveal, traits of each other, which obviously otherwise you may not get to know because you're not working at that time. But then while you appreciate each other for what both of you bring to the table, there can also be moments of disagreement. So, my question is during this journey, and of course it's still ongoing, were there moments of disagreement about perspective, interpretation, or even sporting heroes? And how did you resolve those differences as co authors rather than as family? Vijay, why don't you go first?
Well, like I said, Sangeeta, in the beginning, we a little before this question that we did have agreements, disagreements,
Mm-hmm.
and we had to convince each other. Like he suggested that we would go through each other's chapters,
Mm-hmm.
and there were moments when he would say, "Look, this is the point you are missing, so you have to highlight this." And he was right because he would have done his proper research. And there were times, Sangeeta, when I would have forgotten also because so many events happen. I mean, in 40 years, you can't remember everything. And to get to the minute details, you would read my reports and tell me that, look, this is what you had written then. So you can't have a different perspective now.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very useful. Um, these were the main issues where we would disagree or agree and back each other, kind of criticize each other before it went out to the world. So it was a good learning experience for me. That just because I am an experienced man doesn't mean a young mind cannot correct.
Yes. Very important, but not too many parents or even people from the older generation realize that. I think we all, as we feel that we know the best or we know what is right. So, Akshay, what do you have to say?
Yes, ma'am. I think I'll simply highlight two examples where what kind of disagreements we had. Uh,
Okay.
sorry, during the process. One is I remember. I think it was the chapter on
Mm-hmm.
Sachin Tendulkar, which is we were trying to understand what is the right chronology of events that we should follow or mention in the story. And Dad wanted to have a different. He had a different take on it, whereas I think I wanted to follow the chronology.
Okay.
Because to put it very simply, I think when someone is reading, if things are in a chronological order, I think it's simpler to process. Whereas going back and forth, um, uh, maybe the chapter has to be such that it justifies it, but I felt that it wasn't the case. So that's one example where I think we had a disagreement. Then we tried. He himself rewrote it once or twice. And then he liked it, so we were on the same page after that. Another was the whole discussion about what is a movement, because we are saying that there are 40 movements in the book.
Mm.
What defines a movement? Whether it's is it going to be the top? most achievement of a player? Is it the gold medal achieved by a particular athlete, or is it some other movement? For example, Saina Nehwal is one example that I can think of. We definitely mentioned her bronze medal in 2012 Olympics, but we highlighted her 2015. She climbed to world number one, which was the first time an Indian had done that. So I think that conversation around what defines a moment is something that we definitely went over for quite a few chapters. So I think there were agreements and disagreements there as well. And at the same time, those conversations helped us to understand what would what should how we should define a movement, so that later on we can justify it. So I think yes, that's how I would put that.
Okay. So interesting that, you all, I mean, you had disagreements, but you managed to resolve, which also shows that Vijay was open to suggestions, and so were you. And I think this is how effective and long lasting collaborations work, because you have respect for the other person's point of view. And whether, whichever generation somebody may belong to, it doesn't really matter. It's the point that you're making that is more important. Okay. So coming to We Are the Champions. So the thing is that in this book, you chronicle iconic moments across Indian sport. Now, my question is, what made you decide this book was important now, and especially for the readers aged 13 years and above? Vijay?
Okay. So I was very strong in my feeling that these moments have to be put in one book. So
Okay.
they can be kind of a ready reference. They can be, we are documenting history, and we are by speaking to the protagonist and also people who are connected with the sport, a coach here, a player there, a writer here, So it was a challenge, and my main interest was that I should have these 40 names in one book, which can be read, which will be kept in a school library or the college library or the general library for anybody to just pick up and enjoy. And for me, it was giving respect to these champions. I mean, I have grown up watching some of them, then writing about them. So it was for me, it was a tribute to Indian sports in a package of 40 champions.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I love the idea, it can be kept in a school library, college library for an easy reference. Wonderful. Akshay, what do you have to add to this?
Yes, ma'am. I think how that is the idea was mainly between him and Penguin. That's how they wanted a book that focuses on the best moments of from Indian sports. And also, I think how Dad has mentioned, it's obviously there would be a lot of moments that would come in the next 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, but it's not like these moments would wither away from our memory. Um, uh, in fact, a lot of these would not find any replacement. We are quite sure of that. So, 5, 10 years down the line, I'm sure this book would still have that shelf value. What how we call it. That's how I think yes, I would put that.
And you're right. It will have, because like I said, we people who we have lived through those moments, been a part of those moments, we forget. Like as I said earlier, as life takes over. So somewhere to remind us that this is what somebody from our country did. It's not only useful for us, but for the future generations as well. Moment of national pride. So I must say, a wonderful, wonderful initiative. Okay. Now, guys, this is a woman centric podcast. So there have to be questions related to women, right? So, my first question in this respect is that your books include powerful stories of women athletes, Mary Kom, among others. Now, do you feel Indian sports writing has historically underrepresented women? And do writers today have a responsibility to correct this imbalance? Akshay, would you like to answer this first?
Sure, ma'am. I think I would touch upon it a little lightly because Dad has really good points about it.
Okay.
So I think as a writer and having written about female athletes' performances and achievements in the book as well. It would have been incomplete without mentioning the achievements by our female players, female athletes. Uh, a simple example would be PV Sindhu and Saina Nehwal. I mean, it's talking about badminton in today's generation or today's era. It would be, as I said, incomplete without mentioning their names,
Right.
because we have spoken to so many of badminton coaches, and they themselves have mentioned how a lot of young girls have picked up badminton because they see PV Sindhu and Saina Nehwal as their idols.
Right.
And also highlighting Mary Com's in Mary Com's story, we have how her during her motherhood, she came back to her sport,
Right.
and I think that's something that needs to be highlighted, needs to be talked about, because um, this might sound cliched, but I mean we men won't understand that. What does it takes to give birth, then come back.
Right.
Um, it's like you're redoing the entire stuff that you have done for so many years. So I think that's something that we wanted to highlight.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, Vijay, what would you like to say?
Yeah. For me, I think you're absolutely right about uh, they were not given the due which they deserved. You look at women's cricket. Only now, last couple of years, they have been promoted, and finally they won the World Cup. So I have come from an era when at times I would be the only journalist at the ground writing about the women's cricket match. So that was some of them do remember the old friends of mine from the women's cricket world, and we I mean I have seen empty stadiums when we were reporting women's sport. I used to go drive on a scooter from Delhi to Gurgaon to write about the women's hockey national hockey championship. Hardly any spectator, hardly any journalist. So I remember that it's very vivid for
Mm.
me, going all the way, then coming back. And if I had written, I remember I was told 250 words and I wrote 500. So somebody, my senior, scolded me and told me, this is not world championship, this is just a national championship.
Mm.
So which hurt, because for me it was a sport, and women, like Akshay said, their grit, their resilience cannot be matched. There are many examples where I've seen they have come back very strongly, and now, of course, they get good space
Mm.
in national media, on television, in podcasts, if you see, and they have a platform to express their views, and they are second to nobody in the world of sports. If you see, I mean, India is now looking forward to sending, if they're sending 100 athletes, 50 of them will have to be from the world of women in sports. So, which is good, which reflects on changing times. And you can always, you may not see, sport is not just about power, it is about skill, grace. And no athlete, no gymnast can match a woman's grace in gymnastics or in synchronized swimming.
Mm.
So what I'm trying to tell you is that these are all very, very difficult sport which women are able to perform so fluently. And also, I'm not trying to say because this is a women-centric podcast.
Mm.
If you look at their interviews, they come out so strong and they express their opinions far more better
Mm.
than male athletes.
Mm. Mm. So actually, it's like, they have so far were not given a chance. And like you're saying, the kind of coverage that we are talking about, that was not given that much importance. The sport itself was not given so much importance. So obviously, reporting, writing about them obviously did not happen. But now, thankfully,
Yeah.
things are changing, not only in sports, but in other, fields as well. So, of course, here's to good times as far as, women and in sports is concerned. So tell me something that, yeah, you were saying
Sangeeta,
something?
I was also guilty. When I was for the first time when I was asked to do a women's cricket match, test match,
Yeah.
I questioned why me? Why am I being asked to go and cover a women's cricket match? And now today there is a competition among male reporters to go
Yeah.
and write about women's cricket.
Yes. Because now it has picked up and people are realizing. And like I think it has to do with women in every field, because as how should I say, women were not given that importance earlier. So anything that they did, anything associated with them was also not. But now times are changing, world is changing, people's opinions, beliefs are changing. So yeah, that's a very, very positive sign. So, continuing in the same vein, like we've been talking about how women have been underrepresented, not only in sports as such, but in, terms of coverage and, their sports being recognized as sports. Now, extending this a little further, I want to know what are your views on this? I mean, what role do you think sports stories play in shaping how young girls view ambition, resilience, and success, not just in sports, but in life? Vijay, would you like to answer that first?
I think if Akshay can take the lead,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I'll
yeah.
like to
Sure, Akshay,
have
go
some
ahead.
point.
Yeah, Akshay.
Yeah.
Sure, ma'am. So, I think as a teacher, I used to teach in a school,
Mm-hmm.
in a girls' school, in fact. And we have, I used to, because I used to play football, I taught them football. And at the same time, I took them for a tournament, I took them to Mumbai.
Okay.
And that whole experience taught me that sport is not just because you have to go ahead and maybe choose sport as a career option, but
Right.
it teaches, as you have mentioned, it teaches you a lot of different qualities: resilience, grit, determination. And I think these qualities, they don't just help you in sports, but in fact in all different areas of life,
Right.
be it friendship, be it academics, the grit needed to continue studying. That itself is also it's not easy.
Hmm.
So I think sports definitely helps in that. And yeah, I think that can add further to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today, if you see, most of the stories of girls doing well in sports is the fact that they are driven by the conditions at home where they have to battle so many age-old traditions, defy age-old traditions to come out and play. I mean, there was a time when I remember if my sister would step out, my mother would tell me, keep an eye and
Yeah.
bring her home before sunset.
Hmm.
So times have changed now. They want daughters to go and play. And I know of a lot of academies, sports academies, where the father is bringing the daughter to learn, whether football, hockey, cricket, badminton, table tennis, whatever. So
Yeah.
they are being encouraged because these success stories in sports are giving them financial security, and
Right.
they're promising them a very good life where they don't have to worry about their future. How would they survive? How would they? But if you see most girl athletes today, they stay away from home what almost 10 months a year
Hmm.
in camps, traveling in trains, aircrafts, and buses, and winning, losing, learning. So it's a beautiful process where I have come to realize that today the success stories of girls doing better than boys is driven by the fact that they look at a very secure future for themselves and for their family.
You're right, because see, when they come across women, and in this particular case, women in sports, and they see, what a name they've made for themselves. So that's an inspiration as far as name and fame is concerned, but then also the financial independence that comes with it. And then, as Akshay mentioned, what we're talking about resilience, we're talking about courage, we're talking about ambition. There are so many things. So when they listen to these stories or when they hear about these stories, obviously it's going to be hugely inspirational. And like Akshay, you said, all these qualities. And I think there we are pretty gender agnostic, because whether it is ambition or it is resilience or it is courage, all these are required by both men and women. But I think because of the fact that women have been suppressed to a very large extent in our societies, women need them more than men in a different way. So, yes, these stories I think can play a huge role in, being inspirational for women and young girls in that sense. All right.
Yeah.
So, all through this conversation, we've been talking about research and how you're good with it and how meticulous your research is, in particular, you, Akshay. So, my question is that, of course, both of you are known for this kind of meticulous research. But the thing is that, how do you balance factual accuracy with emotional storytelling, especially when you're writing for a younger audience? Because ultimately, it's not facts that you're presenting, it's not an encyclopedia, it is a story at the end of the day. So, how do you balance these two elements? Vijay?
I have learned in my career that never to compromise with facts. So,
Okay.
whatever data you have, whatever experience you have, you cannot compromise when it comes to factual reporting. That's what I grew up learning. So, it was easy for me writing these inspiring stories based on facts, based on what I saw. I was told very early in my career that you will write what you see, you will write what you hear. So here means from the player, coach, and when I say you will write what you see is when I go and report. So reporting taught me very early that you cannot compromise with facts. So
Correct.
this was what drove me to do this book, and also I've taught Akshay to be truthful. Whatever he writes, he has to be. He cannot make a compromise on facts.
Absolutely. So, Akshay, what do you have to say?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. I think while growing up, I mean, I always listened to so many of his conversations with his colleagues
Mm.
on how sometimes he would criticize some other journalist or some other an article in some other newspaper because it's not accurate. But I think what I'm trying to highlight is the effort that is needed to first find that accurate information,
Right.
and you have to talk to 10 people. You have to maybe first few won't give you the right information.
Mm.
So even knowing what is right information in itself is hard. And back then there was no Google. For us, maybe there are 10 sources. We can just type in. We even though we know what sources are dependable and what are not, which are not.
Mm.
Back then that was not easy. So I
Yes.
think that approach, combine that with being a science student, as I mentioned, you have to focus on accuracy and exactness of whatever you're writing or whatever you are producing.
Mm.
So I think that's an approach that I try to bring into my writing.
So how do you then balance it with storytelling? Because at the end of the day, you're using the facts to tell a story. So you're making them interesting. Like I said, they are not just facts and figures, because then it would read like a news item or maybe an encyclopedia, but you're actually making it out into a story. So you do have to balance the two elements, right? You have to present them
Yes.
in the way you would tell a story. Is that right?
Yeah, but I would connect it with a situation. I would connect it with a development during the game, before the game, after, or much before the contest would have happened. Go by what the coach would have a story to share. His parents would have to share, and even the player himself or herself. They will have a different perspective. They will guide you through the event. So that's where you have to keep your eyes and ears open
Yes.
and look for angles. Like Akshay was saying in the beginning, angles is very important.
Yes.
The moments are very important. And then, of course, writing skills. How you highlight the main point. I mean, it cannot be buried towards the end. It has to come in the beginning. So that's what I've tried. We have tried to do in this book.
Very interesting because,
But maybe I,
yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're saying?
sorry, I was just going to add one more bit about how about this with regarding to the same question, that is
Yeah.
regarding the same question,
Mm.
which is even when I write, it's we definitely mention the facts. The facts have to be there, but at the same time there are as Dad mentioned, there are these emotional aspects to
Yes.
every story.
Yes.
I think those aspects bring out the soul of a particular story. I think that's something that I would focus on.
Mm.
And yes, different angles. Also, how you use your language.
Yes.
That's something that I have tried experimenting with, and I think with time, even I'm learning on how to use language to make it more interesting, more compelling,
Yes.
and not just make it factual. Uh,
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah.
That's true, because when facts are presented in an interesting way, in the form of a story with the context, with different angles, they tend to stay, they tend to stick. Otherwise, they may just be forgotten, because if it's just a number, just data, that can be easily forgotten. But if you've given the context, if you've given the angle, obviously it is going to stay. All right. So, I want to know, when a teenager finishes reading We Are the Champions, what is the one feeling, question, or spark you hope stays with them long after they've shut the book? Akshay?
Sure, ma'am. Sorry. I think for me, the most important aspect that that the reader should take away is having this inquisitiveness, or maybe a question, which is, what is it that drives that that athlete? What is that one factor that was the defining reason for why they continued that sport? Was it their own liking for that sport? Was it because of the environment in which they grew in, their parents, their siblings, or their friends, or the community where they used to live in? And therefore, and I'm not sure if a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old really can think this deep, but I'm sure a few years down the line, they will have that reflecting point in their head, which is, what is it that drives you? And if they remember those stories and the book is still there on their shelf, then they can always revisit and maybe find out. Or in fact, if they're curious, they can always look for more sources to know what drives a sports person. And maybe that can be a motivation for themselves and even others.
Yes, yes, I agree.
I would just add one sentence. I want them to be inspired by the champions. When we say we are the champions, one of them can go on to become a champion, and also learn to respect India's sporting history. Please remember that today you may have lots of facilities, but there are a lot of champions in this book who didn't have the basic infrastructure to pursue sports and excel in it. So this book, for both of us, is a tribute to their amazing achievements despite the hardships.
Yes, yes, I think that is very important. So, one is, of course, you get inspired, and then you also remember your history, because they always say that history repeats itself. So, there could be circumstances, there could be situations which repeat themselves in your life, but then you can learn from this and see that what the others could do, people in the past, we can also do it. So, yes, I think that's a great, great legacy for any kind of book to leave. All right. So, guys, while we've come to the end of the conversation, we still have the rapid fire round, which is 5 quick questions, 5 quick answers. You don't get time to think, and I decide who's going to answer first. So, is that fine? Yes?
Fine, sure. Yes.
All right. So, the first question: one sporting moment that still gives you goosebumps every single time, Vijay.
The 2001 India-Australia Test match at Kolkata, which I covered, and I revisit that game even today.
Wonderful. Akshay, what about you?
And for me, this match between India and South Africa, if I'm not mistaken, which was in which two world records were broken at the same time. I think it was a one-day international, and I remember we were in the train or on a flight, and I hated the fact that I missed that match,
Okay.
because two world records back to back were broken in the same match.
All right. Okay. The next one, and Akshay, you'll answer it first. A sporting rule you'd love to change just for fun.
Uh, I think now we have these VR cameras in football.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if that can be termed as a rule, but I think we need to go back to how referees used to take that decision, and maybe we could even say that for cricket as well. Let that anxiety be there in that game, on players' faces as well, and that frustration that the umpire has given the wrong decision.
Yes. Okay.
And yeah.
Vijay, what do you have to say?
Well, to me, I think they should remove the leg by rule from cricket. It doesn't help anyone. I mean, I bowled a good ball, I've hit the pads, batsman has missed, and he's trying to take runs. So, uh,
Doesn't make sense.
bowler is being punished for bowling a good ball.
Okay. All right. The next one. If your writing style were a sport, which one would it be? Vijay, you go first.
Because I have covered and written and read uh,
Okay. So it would be cricket for you.
cricket.
Okay.
Yeah.
Akshay, what about you?
Uh, I think I would say a test match cricket for me, because my writing is not. I'm not very fast. I take my time.
Okay.
I deliberate. I go through the same stuff again and again. I have to do that.
Okay.
When I feel very confident, that's how I come to a conclusion or an end product.
Okay. Interesting. All right. The next one. And Akshay, you go first here. The most underrated Indian athlete, in your opinion?
Uh, Currently, so we have mentioned Narayan Karthikeyan in our book. I
Okay.
think even though people would know his name, I think um, it takes a lot of effort to continue a sport which is not big in India. And back when he was in motorsports, uh, it wasn't. He had to take a big decision to continue in that sport.
Okay.
So I think I would take his name. Yeah.
Okay. Vijay?
For me, it will always remain left-arm spinner Maninder Singh from Delhi.
Okay.
Underachiever, more underrated and underachiever. He would have been one of the greatest ever, but for whatever reasons, he just faded away too early.
Okay. All right. So the last one. One athlete, past or present, you'd love to have dinner with. Vijay?
Roger Federer.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. What about you,
I
Akshay?
would love to have him.
Okay. Okay. Akshay?
Ma'am, for me, I think it's Messi. I would take his name
Okay.
because I have actually my love for football was because of him.
Mhm.
Because I could say that I had a similar style of playing, where you would play as a winger and then make way into the goalpost. Uh, yeah, yeah, I would take his name.
All right. So, thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation. So interesting, so inspiring. And I love the passion with which you are continuing on this journey. And like I said earlier, doing a great service to all of us by documenting these moments, by helping us relive those moments. And like I said, I think I've said it about 4 or 5 times already, a huge sense of pride for us to know that all these sporting legends belong to our country and hugely inspiring for the coming generation. So thank you so much for being on the show. It was an absolute pleasure having you and talking to you.
Sangeeta, we should be thanking you from the core. I would thank you from the core of my heart because it's been one of my most lovable podcasts, I would say.
Oh,
And your questions, very, very probing. I've done many podcasts, I've conducted many podcasts, but I would always cherish this one.
thank you so much. This means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, I think for me, again, I would like to thank you once again for giving me the opportunity as well to be here and talk to you. The questions, as Dad mentioned, they were probing. At the same time, I was definitely at ease because the questions are in a way that they make you feel comfortable. And I think for me, Dad has a lot of experience, but I don't. So a little bit of nervousness was there, but at the same time, your questions were definitely they helped me become comfortable in during the podcast.
That's so wonderful to know. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the About Her show. If you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more from where that came from. Our previous guests have shared some amazing stories, so be sure to catch up on past episodes. To keep up with our inspiring conversations and to never miss an update, hit subscribe, rate, review, and share the love. Follow us on social media for some great content, and don't forget to check out our website www.aboutherbysangeeta.com for stories that resonate, inspire, and empower. Know a remarkable woman or an inspiring man blazing a trail? We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a note at web.abouther@gmail.com and let's bring their story to life on the About Her Show.